Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, I just want to say that the shir tonight is sponsored by Delia Weiss and family and Miriam and Steve Friedman and family in loving memory of Dr. George Weiss, Zichrono Livracha, Gedalia Chaim ben Avram Moshe, on the occasion of his 5th yortzeit. Dr. Weiss was a regular for many years at the Ashkama Minyan. It just so happened that he really enjoyed the Kiddushes there as well. And that, of course, is Baruch Hashem, Dr. Weiss was a core part of the learning in the shul for so many years and in the community for so many years, the davening, and the Kiddushes were nice too. Also, he always made guests feel comfortable at the Shabbos and Yom Tov tables as well. And that, of course, was something that he did as a partnership with his wonderful wife, Mrs. Weiss, Tibara L'chaim, who we're so glad can join us tonight. And Mrs. Weiss, along with her entire family, but certainly Miriam and Steve, really continue being such a vibrant and essential part of our shul, and also sources of great hachnasas orchim in the community. So thank you very much, the Weiss and Friedman families, for including us in remembering a very special person in the shul, Dr. Weiss, and it should be a zchus for his neshama. Thank you very much. And thank you as always to Miriam for keeping us on tack and scheduling us and being a clearinghouse for many of the shilas that came in. So without further ado, the topic for this week is the positive mitzvos of Shabbos. This regards issues in terms of Shabbos candles, regards issues in terms of Kiddush, regards issues in terms of meals on Shabbos, and regards issues in terms of Abdullah. I think the way we'll do it, maybe we might change up in the middle. I'll have to see. I think I'm going to break it into 4 segments. So I think we'll first do Shabbos candles, and then we'll see if there's any questions on that. And keep on going and so on and so forth. I think if there's too many questions, we'll have to just hold the questions to the end. Miriam, does that sound okay to you? Does that sound reasonable to you? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, first question is, where does one put Shabbos candles? And thank you so much for all the people who submitted questions. As always, the questions are wonderful and they give a very nice body to everything here. Where does one put Shabbos candles? So the intent of the mitzvah of Shabbos candles is that people will benefit from the candles Friday night. So theoretically speaking, it's absolutely appropriate to be putting the candles in a place where you will benefit from them. Now, the ideal place to put them, all things being equal, the ideal place to put them is a place that you will benefit from them during the Friday night meal. That's what makes the most sense. So if you're trying to figure out what room would I put the Shabbos candles in, it would make the most sense to put the Shabbos candles in a room that you're eating Friday night. Having said that, if there's some technical difficulty in one way or another, as long as the Shabbos candles are being placed in somewhere where you will benefit from them, that is acceptable. So just a very common scenario, you're eating out Friday night. So if you're eating out Friday night, is it all right to light at home? It probably is preferable to light at home because it's your home. It makes sense for you to be lighting there. Yeah, but I'm not eating Friday night dinner there, so where should I light? Well, the answer is wherever you'll benefit from the candles. So it's fine to light in the normal place, but then you should spend a little bit of time Friday night in that place where the candles are. There are some times where, for safety reasons, the most dramatic example of this is, of course, sukkahs. People get very nervous about lighting the sukkah. Many people do light in the sukkah, and if a person feels comfortable lighting the sukkah, it's ideal to light in the sukkah on sukkahs. But whether it be safety reasons, whether it be other reasons, it doesn't have to be in the room that one eats, but it should be in a place that someone will benefit in some way that night. Okay, this is a very important question. May one move Shabbos candles? So one may not move the Shabbos candles. The Shabbos candles are a very high level of muksa because right as you accept Shabbos, you create this flame. And the fire is totally muksa, and the candles are considered a base to the fire. And that's so even after the fire goes out, the candles or candlesticks are totally muksa for the rest of Shabbos. So that's important to keep in mind. Ironically, an unlit candle has more leniencies in moving in on Shabbos than candles that had been lit that are no longer burning. So that's just worthwhile to keep in mind. So that means whatever is the position that someone will put their Shabbos candles, that's where it should really go for the rest of, that's where it's going to be. So don't light and then afterwards consider where your Shabbos candle should go. Okay, if I sleep at a friend for Shabbos, do I need to buy into the friend's Shabbos candle? So that's a very interesting question. So you find yourself sleeping at someone's house for Shabbos. So sometimes they'll offer you to light your own candles where you are. And then, of course, you've lit your own candles, you're fine. But many times, for one reason or another, they don't offer you, or it's not feasible for you to light your own candles. So you can be yotze with them. The ideal thing to do is to give them a little bit of money. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It could be 10 cents. And ask them, could they please light with you in mind when they light the Shabbos candles, if you're not going to be lighting for yourself? And could you buy a portion of the Shabbos candles? That's ideal. The vast majority of us are not strict about that. It's sort of understood. You should ask them to light with you in mind. You should ask them to do that. But it's understood that as your host, they're, giving all these things to you, including a share in their Shabbos candle. So practically speaking, there are those who are strict and they pay something for the Shabbos candles that the person should have them in mind. But most of us are not particular about that, and that seems to be reasonable. Those are the Shabbos candle questions. Okay. Okay. Is there anything, does anyone want to chat in any questions about anything that was said about Shabbos candles? Maybe we'll leave call out questions for the end, if that's okay. I think that's the best way to do it. But if anyone wants to put in the chat for Shabbos candles, and if not, we're going to go on. Okay. And for those who want to call out the questions, please, I'll be very happy to take it at the end. Okay, we're moving on to Kiddush. What is the story regarding taking a sip of water before Kiddush? That's a great question. So Kiddush is a very significant mitzvah in honor of Shabbos. And once the time comes to make Kiddush, the halacha is that a person is not supposed to partake of anything else until they make Kiddush. What do we mean when we say the time to make Kiddush? Well, Friday night, it's from the outset of Shabbos. So once Shabbos begins, a person, or by the way, once a person starts Shabbos in the summer, for example, many times people begin Shabbos much earlier than sunset. I should also mention as an aside that pursuant to what we spoke about a few moments ago, the general assumption is that women are accepting Shabbos when they light candles, and men are accepting Shabbos when they daven, at least the later part of Kabbalah Shabbos, Shabbos, certainly. But whether it be that one accepted Shabbos early, whether it be that sunset came, really the basic halacha is one is not supposed to eat or drink until they make Kiddush. And for Shabbos morning, the application of that halacha is that once a person davens shacharis, they're not supposed to eat or drink until they make Kiddush, which means that it's a whole question in general, if it's okay or not okay or appropriate or ideal, all these different opinions. But let's say having breakfast Shabbos morning before you daven, all kinds of things people do. That'll be a good topic for another time, God willing. But assuming for a moment that a person eats before davening Shabbos morning, that's okay because they haven't davened yet, so they're not eligible to make Kiddush yet. Okay? But once they daven shacharis, they're not supposed to eat or drink anything until they make Kiddush. And for Friday night, once Shabbos begins, person's not supposed to eat or drink anything until they make Kiddush. Having said that, many people are lenient about drinking water. Many people are lenient about drinking water. I will mention that the basic halacha is that one should not even drink water once the time for Kiddush has come. So if it's no big deal, you come home, you're going to make Kiddush in 5 minutes, and you're really fine. You really don't need the water, you just feel like having a quick sip of water, it's probably better to just wait the 5 minutes until Kiddush. But if for whatever reason you're very thirsty or it's a very long time, whatever it is, many people are lenient about drinking water before Kiddush. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, how much should a person making Kiddush or Abdullah drink? That's a great question. So the answer to this is a few different points. So point number one, how much wine or grape juice should be in the cup in the first place? So the cup should hold a revius. A revius is normally assessed around 3.3 fluid ounces. Okay, the cup should hold a revius, and the cup should be full. That's considered part of the honor to Kiddush and Abdullah. Now, the cup, of course, could be larger than a revius, but even if the cup is larger than a revius, it should still be full. That's statement number one. Question number two, how much does one have to drink? Does one have to drink the entire cup? So for Kiddush, the halacha is one only needs to drink the majority of a revius, okay, which is about 1.7 fluid ounces. It's not a lot. If it's a very large cup, you still only need to drink the majority of a revius. In other words, the cup should be full, and the cup should hold at least a revius, but the amount you need to drink is only the majority of a revius. That's for Kiddush. For Havdalah, you're supposed to drink a full revius. You're supposed to drink a full revius for Havdalah. And the reason why it's different between Kiddush and Havdalah is Havdalah, it would be nice to be able to make an after bracha on the wine or grape juice that you drank. See, Kiddush, what's going to happen Friday night Kiddush? You're going to make Kiddush, and then you're going to make hamotzi, you're going to have a home meal, and then you're going to bench. So the wine and grape juice from Kiddush is covered by your benching. But Havdalah, you just make Havdalah, and then it's over. So it's appropriate to make an after bracha on the Havdalah, but there's a minimum amount that you need to drink in order to be able to make that after bracha. And that minimum amount is a revius, which is 3.3 fluid ounces. The person posed the question if a person is supposed to be drinking a little bit at Kiddush and continue the rest to drink during the rest of the Suda. I would not say that. A person standard halacha is a person at Kiddush should drink at least the majority of a revius. Okay, hope that made sense. Next question. May one share the 3.3 or 1. Okay, this is a really good question. So we say a person's supposed to drink a majority of a revius, about 1.7 fluid ounces. Can we drink it as a team? You know, I made Kiddush and you're at my table. Can I drink a quarter of a revius and you'll drink a quarter of a revius? Does that work? So there's a lot of discussion about it in halacha. The bottom line is the correct thing to do is ideally the person making Kiddush should drink the full amount themselves. Okay, one person should drink the full amount of 1.7 fluid ounces. Normally, it's the person making Kiddush. It could also be that the person designates someone else to be the one to drink, but ideally, the person making Kiddush should be the one who drinks, and that person should drink at least 1.7 fluid ounces, and then the person is certainly welcome to share more wine or grape juice with whoever else at the table, but they should drink, the person making Kiddush should drink that amount. Now, I will say that in a pinch, it's all right for everyone at the table to combine. Now, I'll tell you where I find that to be very relevant. I don't know if any of you have ever had this experience. You know, it's very awkward. Sometimes you're a guest at someone else's home, and they ask you if you want to make your own Kiddush. You say, no, I'll be Yotzei with you. And they just make Kiddush. And you notice they just had a little sip of the wine or grape juice. And that was all they had. And they didn't have the amount. I mean, if nobody drinks the right amount, I'm actually not even Yotzei the Kiddush that this person just made. That was part of the halacha of the Kiddush. So it's a good one to know that And you don't want to start lecturing the person about how much they're supposed to drink it's a little awkward. So it's a good halacha to know that when you're in an awkward circumstance like that, b'shas hadchak, in a pinch, it's still considered enough was drunk if everybody at the table adds up to the right amount. Which, if there's a decent number of people at the table and everyone adds some wine or grape juice, presumably it adds up to that amount. But that's the only scenario I can think of that it makes sense to apply that halacha. Normally, the halacha would be that whoever's making Kiddush should drink. As we've mentioned, it's not so much to drink in the first place. Whoever's making Kiddush should drink it. And if for some reason the person's not up to drinking that, then maybe someone else should make Kiddush. And if for whatever reason it's really difficult, then make Kiddush and then give that set amount to someone else to drink it. Okay, really, really good question. You see people doing all kinds of things for this. So I'm making Kiddush and you're being Yotze with my Kiddush. So I want to be nice to you. So I pour out Kiddush just for you before I even make Kiddush. So are you supposed to hold that? Are you not supposed to hold that? What's the story with that? Did I just a quick nod or shake of that? Did the question make sense to people? Did people follow that? Yeah, okay. So I don't think it matters that much. It's worth it for you to have in mind that wine or grape juice in front of you is what your bracha is going, that's what you're going to partake of for Kiddush. But I think it's kind of self-understood. The one thing that actually is important here is it's very important to understand this, and this fits into what we talked about a few moments ago. So what happens? So you have, thank God, a nice whole full table. You have 15 people sitting there around the table, and everyone is holding their little thing of Kiddush. Okay? There's only one person who has a revius of wine or grape juice in their cup. And that's the person making Kiddush on everyone's behalf. If I were to ask you, what's your Kiddush? So the answer to that question is your Kiddush is the Kiddush in that person's cup. That revius of wine or grape juice in that person's cup. That's what's making you Yotze this Kiddush. In other words, it shouldn't be that you're holding that little cup in front of you and you think to yourself, we're like all making Kiddush at the same time on our cups. You're not making Kiddush on your cup. You're being Yotze with the head of household's Kiddush. That little cup in front of you is just the designated beverage that you're going to drink afterwards. I hope that made sense. But it's certainly not essential for you to be holding it. Definitely not. And sometimes I don't think it's problematic for you to hold it, but you should understand it's not that you're making Kiddush on that little cup. You're being Yotze with the Kiddush being made by the head of household. Okay. Really, really important question. What if a person doesn't like wine or grape juice? What is this? Is wine or grape juice because we like it? Are there options? What's the story with that? How does it work for Friday night Kiddush? How does it work for Shabbos lunch Kiddush? How does it work for Abdullah? What's the story? So let's go in steps for this. The basic halacha is that the rabbis saw wine and as an extension of that grape juice as being a very prominent beverage. And they felt that when things are being done over a cup of wine or grape juice, people see that it's important and significant and they treat it accordingly. So therefore the rabbis instituted that these are the things that should be used for mitzvos such as Kiddush and Abdullah. So really the halacha is you're supposed to make it on Kiddush or Havdalah. That's really the halacha. Statement number one. Statement number two. If you don't have wine or grape juice, you forgot. You were going to pick it up before Shabbos, you just forgot. So in the absence of wine or grape juice, can you make Kiddush on anything else? So for that, the halacha is that Friday night, you can make Kiddush on the Challah in the absence of wine or grape juice. So that would be that you would, when it's time for Kiddush, you would first wash the Tilos Yadayim. then everybody would come back to the table. You would, instead of holding a cup of wine, you would hold the challahs, and you would proceed with Kiddush holding the challahs. And then instead of a bird brukaf, you would make hamotzi. And then cut the challah and pass it out. But that's really only if you don't have wine or grape juice. Even if you're not a fan of wine or grape juice, you would still make the Kiddush on wine or grape juice. But if you don't have it, then you use challah Friday night. For Shabbos lunch, and for Havdalah for that matter, the halacha is that if a person didn't have wine or grape juice, they actually would not make Shabbos lunch Kiddush or Havdalah on Challah. They would do it on Chamar Medina. Chamar Medina is a prominent drink in that locale. That's what Chamar Medina is. So it's gonna, the halacha will shift based on the place and time. Coffee is generally accepted to be Chamar Medina. Tea would be Chamar Medina. Beer would be considered Chamar Medina. Orange juice and apple juice, according to many, would be considered Chamar Medina. Seltzer is not Chamar Medina. Something that's just water is pretty clearly not Chamar Medina. And there's a lot of discussion about whether, Coke or something like that could be considered Chamar Medina. Many opinions say not. But all of those things that I just mentioned, the basic halacha is, if you didn't have wine or grape juice, you could make it on Chamar Medina, whether it be for Shabbos lunch Kiddush or for Havdalah. But if you have wine or grape juice, that's how you're supposed to do it. There's one famous exception. I hope nobody fainted before I got to the exception. There's one famous exception, which is there are many that are lenient regarding Shabbos lunch Kiddush and making Kiddush on schnapps. So why are they lenient regarding making Kiddush, even when they have wine or grape juice available? Why are they lenient regarding making Kiddush on schnapps? So they're lenient because the nature of the mitzvah of Shabbos lunch Kiddush is not the same level as Friday night Kiddush. You already made Kiddush Friday night, so it's a lesser level. And there are many people who really enjoy their schnapps and will bring you greater joy of Shabbos. So, and schnapps certainly is also Chamar Medina. So for all of those reasons, not everyone agrees to this, but for all of those reasons, many opinions hold it's all right to make Kiddush specifically on schnapps, Shabbos day. If a person's not a fan of schnapps, they shouldn't be making Kiddush on schnapps. They should be making Kiddush on wine or grape juice. Now, the follow-up question is, how much schnapps should a person drink? I told you before, a person for Kiddush is supposed to, have a whole revius cup and drink a majority of revius. You have to drink that much of schnapps. So most opinions that hold that you can make Kiddush on schnapps Shabbos day also hold that you should drink what's considered a significant amount of schnapps. So what's considered a significant amount of schnapps is a shot glass. So not everybody, but according to many opinions, that would be acceptable. Okay, so thank you for those. Those were our questions for Kiddush. I just want to glance very quickly at the chats to see. Okay. So there was a question asked, can you have even a mazonos before Shacharis? So if you hold that it's okay to have breakfast before davening Shabbos morning, which there are people, a person's worried they're going to not have energy, a person's worried they're not going to feel well. If that's your circumstance, then you may have it before. The fact that you haven't made Kiddush wouldn't preclude you from having that mazonos. There are definitely many who would say, unless a person's ill or something, that they shouldn't eat before davening Shabbos morning, but many are lenient on it. I hope I answered that question. Okay, I know other things have coming in the chat. I will get to those when we're done at the end. Okay, next topic. Matters relating to the Shabbos meals. Okay, so you made Kiddush at the beginning of the meal. You made Hagafen because you were drinking wine or grape juice when you made Kiddush at the beginning of the meal. And then in the middle of the meal, you want to have some more wine. So what's the story? Do you make a new boy priagafen? Do you not make a new boy priagafen? So the rule is that the boy priagafen that you would make on the wine during the meal is covered by the boy priagafen you made on Kiddush. Now I should mention that if you didn't make a boy priagafen at Kiddush, even though you made hamotzi, you would need to make a boy priagafen during the meal on the wine if you were drinking wine, or grape juice for that matter, because wine and grape juice are considered such a prominent drink that they're actually not covered by hamotzi. Hamotzi is to bread, well, wine and grape juice, I'm sorry, hamotzi is to food, bread is to food, what wine and grape juice are to drink. So they're considered so prominent that even if I made hamotzi at the beginning of the meal, and normally we don't make brachos during the meal once I made hamotzi, I would have to make a boy priagafen on the wine or grape juice. Now, but that's if I just made Kiddush in shul, and I'm not making Kiddush again at home. Or maybe the person made Kiddush and I didn't partake of the wine or grape juice, so I didn't connect to that boy priagafen. But if I either made a boy priagafen and Kiddush at home, and then right afterwards we washed, or you made Kiddush and I was yotze with your Kiddush and I drank from the wine or grape juice at your Kiddush, so I was connected to boy priagafen. In either of those cases, I would not make hagafen on wine or grape juice drunk during the meal. Okay. This next question we kind of covered to a certain amount in our brachos class, but I'll address it sort of generally. What's the story with brachos on dessert? A person makes hamotzi at the beginning of the Shabbos meal, as we said a moment ago. Normally for foods, all brachos are covered by the hamotzi. So there's an argument that dessert specifically is a different ballgame. And the reason why there'd be an argument that dessert is a different ballgame is the reason why bread covers all the other brachos is because bread is considered the staple of the meal. But when I'm eating dessert, I'm really not eating for nourishment. I'm really eating for my Yetzer Hara, probably. I'm really eating to have a pleasant taste in the mouth. If the shir is in memory of Dr. Weiss, we have to notice, I definitely know the Weiss grandchildren talk about being foisted many sweets upon, having many sweets foisted upon them in the Weiss home. So that's a mitzvah. If you're at your grandparents' house, it's a mitzvah to have a lot of dessert. But for the rest of us, it's just the Yetzer Hara. So it's not serving the same function. It's not serving the same function as bread. So therefore, according to many opinions, not everybody, but according to many opinions, what you have for dessert, you would have to actually make a separate bracha for. For reasons that I don't want to get into now, many opinions say that cookies and cake, because they're so similar to bread, are covered by the hamotzi, and you wouldn't make a mazonos on them. But for example, a fruit salad at dessert, according to many, you would make a bar piyatz on a fruit salad served at dessert, or bar of ice cream, shahakol, you would make a bracha on that. Okay, let me just see if any chats came in. Okay, we're going to go on to Abdullah now, and again, there'll be time for all kinds of questions at the end, God willing. What's the story with drinking water after sunset before you made Abdullah Saturday night? We said that once it's sunset Friday night, you're not supposed to eat or drink until you make Kiddush. Is there a parallel halacha for Abdullah Saturday night? So there is somewhat of a parallel halacha for Abdullah Saturday night. It's not as much because of the importance of Abdullah as much as Abdullah is a significant mitzvah. So since Abdullah is a mitzvah, once the time for Abdullah comes, we don't want you eating, drinking, getting sidetracked and the like. So generally speaking, once sunset comes, you're not supposed to be eating until you make Havdalah. That is the general halacha. Now, there's a very important exception for that. If I was eating a meal with bread In halacha, bread is a whole different level. If I was eating a meal with bread and I began the meal before sunset, then even though we're going to make Havdalah in 2 minutes, if I haven't yet benched from that meal, it's all considered an extension of a meal that began in a permissible manner because it was before sunset, and it's fine. So that's why it's a little confusing. You walk into shuls all the time, and they'll be eating Challah Shudas far past sunset. So that's okay because they washed right before sunset. So then it's just an extension of the meal that began in a permissible manner. On the other hand, if you didn't wash, you're really not supposed to be eating once sunset has come. Now, water, we're lenient about. You want a drink of water, 10 minutes before it's time for Abdullah. There are Kabbalistic reasons not to have the water, but many are lenient about it. There's more grounds to be lenient about the water before Abdullah than the water before Kiddush, if people are keeping score. But if someone tells you they don't drink water after sunset, they're not crazy. There are Kabbalistic reasons, but for those of us who are not as particular about Kabbalistic matters, it would be fine to drink water even though it's after sunset. But other types of drinks, like a coffee or juice or something like that, unless you washed and ate bread before sunset, you should not be partaking of it until you make Havdalah. Okay. And by the way, I want to clarify that even if a person didn't wash, even if they began, gnashing on the leftover dessert from Shabbos lunch, even if they began gnashing on that before sunset, once sunset comes, they're not supposed to be eating it anymore. The one exception is if they washed on bread before sunset. That's the way that normally plays out. Okay, so it's a mitzvah to have Challah Shudas. It's a mitzvah, men, women, everybody has a mitzvah of Challah Shudas of the third meal. So when's the deadline to have Challah Shudas? So it should be apparent from what we've been speaking about that really a person is supposed to partake of Challah Shudas before sunset. A person is at least supposed to begin Challah Shudas before sunset. If a person was running late, is there any leniency to have Challah Shudas even after sunset? So there's a lot of discussion about it. The bottom line is many are lenient that if it's within about 10 minutes or so after sunset, a person may still wash and eat Challah Shudas. It would only be for the sake of eating Challah Shudas, the third meal, Sudash Lishit. Certainly, though, a person should be making every effort to begin Sudash Lishit before sunset. Okay. So for those who daven in shul Saturday night, they make Havdalah. So if I hear Havdalah in shul, do I need to make Havdalah again at home? What's the story? How does that work? So a few things. So first of all, I can be Yotzi. I may be Yotzi with the Havdalah in shul, but I'm only Yotzi with the Havdalah in shul if the person making the Havdalah in shul has in mind that he's being motzi me. Now, he doesn't have to specifically have me in mind. If the Gabbai in shul, has in mind, whoever wants to hear Abdullah, I'm making Abdullah for them, then anyone who wants to be Yotze with that Abdullah is Yotze with that Abdullah, as long as they can hear everything clearly and they say amen to the brachos, they're Yotze with that Abdullah. Just so we don't have a bunch of people bothering poor Seth Katz this Saturday night. Seth definitely assumes they have in mind that there are people who are being Yotze with him, and he has in mind whoever wants to be Yotze should be Yotze. Now, is there any reason not to be Yotze? And if I'm Yotze with Abdullah and Shul, there's no need for me to make Abdullah when I come home. And in fact, if I was Yotze with Abdullah and Shul, if I don't need Abdullah when I come home and no one else needs Abdullah when I come home, for me to make Abdullah again would actually be a bracha in vain. If I like the idea of making Abdullah at home, I could just not intend to have be Yotze and Shul. That's fine. That's fine. It's fine for me to make Abdullah at home. But if I had in mind to be Yotze and Shul, and no one needs to hear my Abdullah at home, I shouldn't be making Abdullah again. at home. Is there a reason to be making Havdalah at home? Well, yes. The reason to be making Havdalah at home is that there's a lot of question as to the nature of a woman's obligation on Havdalah. The question is not so for Kiddush, by the way. Kiddush, there's no doubt women are absolutely as obligated as men for Kiddush. The reason there's a question about women in Havdalah is because women are fully obligated to all the mitzvahs of Shabbos. But the question is, do we treat Havdalah as the last mitzvah of Shabbos or the first post-Shabbos mitzvah, basically? And if you treat it as the first post-Shabbos mitzvah, it could be women are not obligated. It's their question. Let's see the brachos. So it's ideal for a man to be saying Havdalah for himself and a woman to be yotze with that, as opposed to a man saying Havdalah only for the sake of women, because there are questions about the brachos on Havdalah if it's for women, which we'll get to soon, God willing. So if a fellow is coming home to his own home, to someone else's home, and there is a woman or women who will want to be yotze with his Havdalah, and no men who will want to be yotze with Havdalah, there's a very good reason why they should not have in mind to be yotze with Havdalah and shul, and they'll make Havdalah for themselves when they come home. Okay. I just have to give a little bit of a public service announcement for a moment. I'm breaking the rules. Nobody asked about this, but it's something that I notice a lot, so I just want to mention it. So if I'm making Havdalah, let's say I'm in shul, and let's say I decide every now and then there's some family simcha and there was some shul simcha, so I stay home for Shabbos and Tara and the kids go away. So sometimes I'm just home alone for Shabbos. So in that situation, I just listen to Havdalah and shul. Why should I take an extra cup of grape juice? I'll listen to the Seth Havdalah. That's just fine. So sometimes there's a number of people around being yotze with Havdalah, and sometimes by the time the besamim gets to me, you pass the besamim around and everybody smells the besamim. Sometimes by the time the besamim gets to me, the person making Havdalah has already moved on. So actually, it's not so good for me to be draying around with the besamim when the person has already moved on. I'm supposed to be listening closely to what that person is saying, right? And by the way, I'm only smelling the besamim because I'm connected to that person's bracha on the besamim, but they've already moved on. So that also doesn't work so well. So if the person making Havdalah for me has moved on already, I'm actually best off not smelling the besamim while he's still making Havdalah. And then once Havdalah is over and he's drunk from the Havdalah and I fulfilled the mitzvah of Havdalah, then afterwards I just pick up the besamim and I make my own bracha, borei minei besamim, and I smell it. That's just a public service announcement. Okay. So I hope this wasn't my wife who submitted this question. Maybe it's a hint that I'd leave her waiting too long at home before I get home for Havdalah. The question submitted is, Shabbos goes out before anyone is home to make Havdalah. What may a person do? So is Baruch HaMavdil enough? Is Baruch HaMavdil not enough? So here's the story. Everybody has to either say or hear Havdalah Saturday night. Okay? Statement number one. Statement number two. One is not allowed to eat or drink things, with the exception of water, until they make or hear Havdalah. That's statement number two. Statement number three, if a person is sick and tired of waiting for their husband or whoever else to finally get home and make Havdalah, it is fine. It is perfectly fine. Once the time for the end of Shabbos has come, it's perfectly fine to say the phrase, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, which is sort of like a cliff notes almost of Havdalah, a significantly abridged Havdalah, certainly not a full Havdalah. That's a recognition that it's not Shabbos anymore, and it didn't just Shabbos didn't just stumble away. A person noted it. Once they do that, they are allowed to do anything that you're allowed to do during the week. They can turn the lights on and off. They can start washing dishes. They can turn on the dishwasher. They can flip on the television. They can do all of those things. They can get in the car and go to pick somebody up from wherever they're staying. But they need to realize two things. One thing is they still need to hear Abdullah. And the second thing is they're not allowed to eat or drink except for water until they hear Abdullah. Okay, so that's the story with that. The question, I'm just gonna rephrase the question slightly. A woman wants to get something from the store right after Shabbos. They don't want to wait around. There is a man who's coming home to say Abdullah. The question is, does a woman need to wait for the man to come home, or can they just make Abdullah for themselves? I mean, what the questioner is assuming is that the woman is best off not running to the store before Abdullah, and that's probably a good assumption, notwithstanding what I just said, just because once you get into your regular Saturday night routine, it's so easy to totally forget about making Abdullah. So probably, it's one thing you just run to pick somebody up and come right back home, but to start, going to the affair and the this and that, it's probably not a good idea. Is there a reason to wait for the man to hear Abdullah from the man? So there is a reason to hear the Abdullah from the man. There is a benefit in hearing Abdullah from the man because there are certain questions in brachos. There's also Kabbalistic ideas. The woman's not supposed to drink for the cup of Abdullah. Having said that, and I must emphasize this, it is definitely okay for a woman in a context where there's not a man coming to make Abdullah. It's definitely okay for a woman to make Abdullah for herself. It's definitely okay for a woman to make Abdullah for herself. I would say practically, maybe let's classify it as a stringency. You will meet women who are very particular. They don't make Abdullah for themselves. They go next door. They go to this one. They go to that one. That's not crazy. There are reasons to do that. But the bottom line is, it's definitely all right for a woman to make Abdullah for herself. If there's a man coming home and it's just a matter of waiting another 10 or 15 minutes, it's better to wait. But if it's going to be this inconvenience and awkwardness, to be candid, of going and knocking at someone's door, a woman doesn't have to do that. If a woman wants to do that, they're not crazy, but they don't have to do that. There is a famous dispute if a woman making Abdullah herself, if a woman making Abdullah for herself, makes the bracha on the candle. The reason being because the candle is there's not a clear bracha of benefit. In other words, if you're having a bonfire tonight and you light the fire, you don't make a bracha of Bari Marayaish on that. If you smell psamim tonight, if you want to just experience the smell of cinnamon for some reason tonight, you would make a bracha of Bari Marayaish psamim on that. But if you lit a candle tonight, you wouldn't make a bracha of Bari Marayaish. So there's a question if a woman would make the bracha of Bari Marayaish. If a woman is used to making the bracha of Bari Marayaish, she can continue to do so. She may continue to do so. But when women ask me, I normally say that I normally am inclined to go like the opinions that say woman doesn't make the bracha of Bari Marayaish on the candle, and that would mean she wouldn't light the candle if she's doing it for herself. But I repeat, there are many opinions that say she does make that bracha. So if a person is used to making that bracha, that's fine. It's totally fine. Okay, those are the questions that were submitted. I hope I answered them appropriately. I hope I caught all of them. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the chats that I have not yet answered. And then once we're done with that, people should feel free to call out questions. Okay, question number one. What a great question. And I have to say, for the record, this question was submitted before I made my snide remark about desserts. Is one required to eat large meals on Shabbos? Like, we talk about having nice meals on Shabbos. What does that mean? That's a great question. So I want to answer it in two ways. I want to answer first on a minimal halachic level. In terms of the basic obligation of the meals of Shabbos, the basic obligation of the meals of Shabbos is to wash on the two loaves, certainly Friday night and Shabbos lunch. The third meal, it's certainly appropriate to wash on the two loaves for the third meal. There are opinions that are more lenient, that a person could just have mazonos, or even a person could even just have shahakol or ha'etz or adama, as long as they're doing it in honor of Shabbos. But certainly for the first two meals, the basic obligation is to have bread, and the person should have something special in honor of Shabbos. Something. It could be a piece of gefilte fish. If a person washed and had a piece of gefilte fish, in terms of the halachic obligation, of course, makes Kiddush before, of course, they have fulfilled their halachic obligation of a Shabbos meal. Now, there's an idea that a Shabbos meal should be nice. A Shabbos meal should be something special. That has more to do with the spirit of Shabbos and the joy of Shabbos, which is certainly valuable. But if a person is watching themselves, if a person doesn't even feel good after eating that much, if a person is wiped out, they're not in the mood, they are Yotzei, they have fulfilled their obligations in the minimal way that I described. But, if a person will enjoy, and it won't be detrimental to a person's health, they have a little bit of a nicer meal than that, so that they feel more connected to the Shabbos. That's sort of the spirit of how it's supposed to work. I hope I answered that question. A very interesting question. So we said that the Shabbos candles are muksa. Is it all right to keep Shabbos candles on the dining room table when the table may be jostled a little bit during the meal, and therefore indirectly the candles might be moved? If the candles are moved in that setting, it's totally indirect, and it's not a muksa issue, and it's not intended even. So you're not trying to move the candles, you're not even directly moving the candles, it's just sort of circumstantial. That's not a problem. And therefore, if a person is comfortable having the candles on the Shabbos table, it's totally fine. Now, if it makes a person nervous to have the candles on the Shabbos table because the table's a little bit flimsy and people bump against the table and this and that, and they'd rather have it elsewhere, that's fine. But if they would like to have the candles on the Shabbos table, I don't see a muksa problem with it. Okay. Okay. I think I've addressed all the questions that were sent beforehand and that are in the chat. Would anyone now like to call out something? Sue?
Okay, so on Friday night, my husband goes to shul at 7 o'clock. Shabbos really doesn't start to 8:30. When am I obligated to light candles?
Great question. Thank you so much. Okay. The bottom line is it's okay. It's okay for you to light candles much later than your husband is davening. Obviously, you have to be cognizant of the regular candle lighting time and all that kind of stuff, but now it's okay. It is definitely preferred, though. It's definitely preferred that you should light candles before your husband gets to Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos in the Friday night davening, which is basically, in most circumstances, take whatever time Mincha is called for and add 20 minutes. I think that's a decent estimate. There's a reason for it. The reason is because your husband has the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles as well. He's not lighting Shabbos candles because you're lighting Shabbos candles on his behalf. It's a little bit not so good for you to be representing him at a time where he can no longer do that action. So that's the rationale. So if it's possible for the wife or whoever is lighting on behalf of the household to light before, let's say, 20 minutes or so after Mincha was called for, that is great. If things are whatever, there's definitely what to rely on to light later than that. But that's the issue with that. That's what that's about. Yeah, thank you. I think that's an important point.
Rabbi?
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Spiro?
Yes. A woman lives alone. Could she be Yotzei hearing Havdalah over the phone?
Thank you. That's a very important question. Thank you for that. So I'm going to answer you on two levels, okay? On an ideal halachic level, I would say it's definitely preferable for her to either make Havdalah for herself, or if she's not comfortable with that, hear Havdalah from someone in person. Having said that, if a woman is really not comfortable making Havdalah, and she doesn't want to be in this strange situation of knocking on this one's door, knocking on that one's door, and that, there's what to rely on to be yotze with someone else's Havdalah by phone. I'm not trying to dodge the question. Did I answer your question?
Yes. And I have another one.
Yes.
The other question is, one can be Yotzei, a man can be Yotzei in Shul, Shabbos night with Havdalah by the Gabbai, whatever. What is the purpose of Kiddush in Shul Friday night?
That's a great question. Why do we make Kiddush in Shul Friday night? By the way, as some of you probably know, there are shuls that don't make Kiddush Friday night. But many shuls make Kiddush Friday night. Our shul in normal times, by the way, if anyone's wondering, since COVID began, we haven't been making shul and Kiddush and shul Friday night. I'll tell you the reason we haven't gone back to Kiddush and shul Friday night is because I just think, we want everyone to be wearing masks. I don't want all the kids running up, taking off their masks to drink from the Kiddush. And I think it's like cruel to these kids. They think it's going to, you know what I mean? So I don't want to do that to them. And the many minyanim don't make Kiddush Friday night, but God willing, one of these days, when the masks come off, the Kiddush will return. God willing, with Hashem's help. And Mrs. Spiro, when that happens, I expect you to be lining up for Kiddush. But what's the story with Kiddush Friday night? It's actually very interesting. The Gemara discusses making Kiddush and Shul Friday night. It was very common that people who needed a place to stay for Shabbos, like travelers, would actually sleep in the Shul Friday night, and they would eat in the Shul Friday night as well. And it was considered a chesed by the community. It was one less thing for them to worry about. Kiddush was covered. So they didn't have to figure out what was going to be for Kiddush. Kiddush would be made. And then once everybody leaves, then they'll make hamotzi, Now, one could certainly pose the question, no one's eating in shul now. And if they are, thank God, they're having all kinds of stuff downstairs in the social hall if there's a Friday night meal. So this is why some places do it and some places don't. The basic halacha, many poskim say once it's the minhag, once it's the custom class, we should keep on doing it. So that's why it's the normal shul thing is to make Kiddush and shul Friday night. And once that practice started, for the reason we mentioned, it was kept. But that's also why many shuls, yeshivas, don't make Kiddush and shul Friday night. But Havdalah is much more practical because there are many people who end up benefiting from the Havdalah made in shul Saturday night. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? Somebody submitted a question for Shabbos day. Are the amounts for Kiddush for Shabbos day the same as for Friday night? Probably for Shabbos day, it could be a little bit more lenient. You could probably get away with 2.9 fluid ounces for Shabbos day. But again, the cup should be full. You know what I mean? But probably the cup could be a little bit smaller. We mentioned the specific leniency if a person's making Kiddush on schnapps, Shabbos day, they could use a shot glass according to many opinions. Anything else? Okay. So now we've come to that time again. We have to figure out what the next topic will be. So I'll just share with you two ideas that I had based on some feedback from people. I'm so happy if anyone wants to put it in the chat, other suggestions. So again, sometimes people have such great ideas, but I think either the topic is a little too narrow or just too vast, or it's something that's such a good topic that people would probably have a hard time finding questions about it because it's not so well known. So I don't think it plays well to this format. The two ideas that I was thinking about are, one are laws of tzedakah. I don't think we've done that yet. I'm pretty sure we haven't. And the other is matters regarding honoring one's parents. I don't know if either one of those resonate with anyone. You're welcome to submit something in the chat if you think either one of those are a decent idea, or something else you would recommend. Just wait a moment or two more to see if there's anything else that comes in the chat. And again, if people, I'll tell you what, stay tuned, because I got a total of 1 vote, which makes me think we didn't generate a lot of excitement on this one. So I'm going to keep on thinking about it. Please feel free to send me an email if you have an idea for what you think what might be good. It could be we'll end up doing one of these anyway. Maybe I'll get some more if I already got another chat. Thank you. But again, if you have other thoughts or preferences, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you so much, everybody. As always, big thank you to Miriam. Harder to think of a finer way to bring merit to your father's neshama than being such a significant role in this shiur. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for submitting questions. Okay, good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.